Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So continuing where we left off, inshallah. So we was talking about, obviously, a person asked regarding how to avoid being affected by people, or being very careful when it comes to who you listen to. And I mentioned the importance of learning the Arabic language. Even the books that we're studying allow us to affirm what is the correct aqidah that we're supposed to have. What is the correct aqidah? When we have the correct aqidah, by studying properly, we're able to have a measuring stick of what is in opposition, who opposes the correct aqidah. For example, for now, when you're initially going through books of aqidah, you're not going to really mention the deviant factions. Why? Because you need to have a basis first. A basis established upon the truth, so you're able to recognize, okay, what's the correct way of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah regarding the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is the correct stance of acts of worship at the grave, for example? That's where you find matters where people have deviated. But if you don't have a basis, you may hear something and feel like they're justified. They use evidence, but you don't understand the evidence properly, and you will say, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with what they're saying, because you don't have a basis, you see. Because as we mentioned previously, Aqidah is not a difficult science. Aqidah is easy. Why? Because it agrees with the fitrah. It agrees with the fitrah that Allah has created us upon. And it's only derived from the Quran and the Sunnah. It's not based upon qiyas, analogy. La, it's based upon, Allah says in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad mentioned in the Sunnah. That's it. That's where the Aqidah is taken from. And a common issue that you find, regarding the people of innovation is when they give a lot of emphasis on the aql, the intellect. When a lot of the arguments is based upon logic and the intellect. And that's got no basis when it comes to the Quran and the Sunnah. Why? Because as I mentioned before, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, I mentioned the statement, Al-aql as-salim la yu'arid al-naql as-sahih. A sound mind will never oppose or contradict authentic evidence. And if you find someone in opposition to that which is correct, it's not because of the evidence, or if they feel like there's a contradiction. There is no contradiction. The issue is in that person themselves. The issue is in that person themselves. And of the things that I also emphasize for us as students of knowledge, trying to, in the stage that we're at, don't give ear to people of doubt. Don't offer an ear to people of doubt. You don't need to. Don't go listen to arguments of doubts. Don't waste your time. That time can be spent attaining knowledge. Because when you spend time studying knowledge properly, the issues that people have doubt in is mentioned. A book, for example, I started reading just reading for leisure. When I say leisure, not to have fun, but in terms of just not as a studious way, but just to read it. One book I have was موسوعة العقيدة والعقائد والأديان والمذاهب المعاصرة. It's about 7 volumes, and it's an encyclopedia about different beliefs and religions and madhahib, all of these matters that are contemporary. And it's in alphabetical order. And it mentions, for example, the first thing it starts with Adam alayhi salam. What's the meaning of Adam? His characteristics, how Allah created him, the verses that mention this. Then they'll mention, for example, matters that are related that are not authentic, or areas that people have gone into misguidance regarding, you see, and the likes. when you see this now, these kind of books, then you're going to understand, for example, it mentions Ahlul Hadith. What is the meaning of Ahlul Hadith? Who are Ahlul Hadith? Why is the Aqidah strongest with the people of Hadith? Why? Because they derive their Aqidah from the Quran and the Sunnah. And of the things that I mentioned from the sifat of Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah or Ahlul Hadith, of the names that's also referred to them as, you find whenever you look at their works, no matter what country they come from, which language they speak, they are all saying the same thing. And that's the difference between people of the Sunnah and the people of Bid'ah. The people of the Sunnah, they all speak with the same tongue, i.e. the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, as for the people of innovation, what do they give a lot of emphasis on? Intellect. So everyone's got a difference of opinion. They all differ based upon logic and intellect. La. As for the people of the Sunnah, Ahlul Sunnah al-Jama'ah, because their Aqidah and their acts of worship is based upon the Quran and the Sunnah, they speak with one tongue. No matter what country they come from, which language they speak, with knowledge they speak with one tongue. And that's of the distinguishing factors of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Masadir al-Talaqi. Where did they extract their Aqidah and their practice of Islam from? The Quran and the Sunnah, al-Qiyas al-Sahih, wal-Ijma'. Wal-Ijma' obviously before Qiyas. Now, but if we just reflect on our study of Kitaab Tawhid, every chapter has never started off with any random speech. It's always started with Allah said first, and then something from the Sunnah. Always Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. Every bab of Aqidah, Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. And even this section, Al-Manahi Al-Shirkiyya, Al-Alfadh Al-Shirkiyya, the things of shirk, is either starting off the chapter is this ayah. Now, not bab man fa'ala hadha wa it's al-ayah. But even when the bab had a name, the bab of those who do this, the first evidence is ad-dalil al-awwal, ad-dalil al-thani. Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. That's what it's based upon. You see? That's why even the issue that was raised during the lesson about what was said about the kuffar from Ahlul Kitab. Again, whenever we have these discussions also, if you feel like someone's opposing, ask them for the evidence. Because in our level as beginning student of knowledge as well, we cannot say we're fully versed. We're not fully versed in all of these arguments to say, I'm going to rule out an opinion in totality. La. Either it's false, or it may be something that is authentic, but I'm not privileged with that knowledge right now, or that hadith that is supporting that hasn't reached me, or that ayah that speaks about that, or I haven't heard any mashaykh say something like this. You have to look at what was the person's intention, where did they get that information from? Because Islam is complete. We don't need to come with anything new. Aqeedah, there's no room for anything new. The only things you find new in Aqeedah is refutation of those who have gone astray. When they start to bring about new beliefs, new acts of worship that have no basis. But as for the Aqeedah of the Muslim, nothing new is going to come. It's the day Allah says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Khalas, Aqeedah is done. You see? And that's why if you look at the difference between the books of Aqeedah from the earlier generations to now, they only became longer and more detailed as we moved further away from the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because we had to clarify the stance of Ahl Sunnah, the Aqidah Sahiha, with the manifestations of innovation, the manifestations of misguidance. So they became necessary to clarify. For example, of the things that is spoken about in Aqidah, that is a fiqh issue, is what? Wiping over the socks. Wiping over the socks is an aqeedah issue as well as a fiqh issue. Why? Because you find it became something that many of those who oppose the correct aqeedah were known for having opposition to wiping over the socks. You see, a person be like, why is this in a book of aqeedah if they don't know anything about those who have gone astray? Now, so things like this. But in the early days, was that needed? No. Or for example, the speech of the hukm ala man qala al-Quran makhluq, the rule of those who say the Quran is created. That wasn't something that was necessary in the early days. Why? Because no one had that belief. But when that belief came, it was important to mention the stance, the correct stance regarding the Quran, أنه كلام الله منزل, that is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That became necessary when those who emerged with that false belief as a means of rebuking them. That's why you'll find subhanAllah in the book, the Mawsu'a, it mentions مسائل المختلف فيه يعني ومن انحرف and the likes, those who have differed and opposed the correct position of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and matters where they've gone astray. Matters where they've gone astray. And the importance of evidence, because sometimes people are going to bring about evidence and the hadith is not even authentic at times. Or for example, the hadith they use are da'if or fabricated mawdu'. For example, there's a book of hadith for the Shia, and they say it's the most authentic book of hadith. But every single hadith is fabricated. And it only has about 200 hadith. But all the hadith within it are fabricated. And they consider to be more authentic than Bukhari and Muslim. This is now straight desires. Yani al-inhiraf because of following desires. How can you have a book of hadith, everything is fabricated, and you want to compare it to Bukhari and Muslim? Allahu musta'an. And that's why a person is to be grateful and show gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jalla when they find themselves upon the correct aqeedah. Upon the correct aqeedah. When you look at the circles of knowledge of Ahl Sunnah, they're not big. But when you look at the gatherings of dhikr for the Ahl Tasawwuf, for example, the Sufis, massive. Does that mean they're upon the haqq? La. Not at all. But Allah musta'an. We're in times where the emergence of misguidance is going to be abundant. And the only means after the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stay safe is to seek knowledge. To seek knowledge and be close to the people of knowledge. And not to restrict who the people of knowledge are. For example, you have some who claim to be the only people of the Sunnah, especially in the West, Wallahu musta'an, and they only have a few number of scholars that they refer to. Or they limit who you can go back to. And they won't go back to the most senior of scholars as well. And you find themselves busy themselves with warning against this, that, the other, before actually having ta'sil al-ilm, before becoming firmly grounded in knowledge. And every year, every so often, they come around whispering, saying, "Oh, go to that masjid." They will say it's better for you to pray in Masjid Ahlul Bid'ah than this masjid. Allah musta'an. It doesn't stop, and it's not going to stop. It's from fitting the trials until Yawm Qiyamah. But Allah musta'an, those who have knowledge and seek knowledge in the right way, they're the ones who are able to navigate, especially in times of difference. Because it's not based upon who said it, it's based upon what was said. The only time it was saying, قال الله وقال رسول. Because other than that, as Imam Malik mentioned, كل قول مردود إلا صاحب هذه القبر. Every statement is rejected except for the companion of this grave. And he pointed to the grave of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But as for that, anyone who says something, it can be accepted or rejected, based on their evidence. So it's important to understand this. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So, any questions before we move on to the next chapter? جيد. So, باب قول الله تعالى قال فلما آتاهما صالحا جعل له شركاء فيما آتاهما. So here it mentions, and when good came to them, they made shirk in what they received. When they received good, they made shirk in that which they received. What does this mean? As that's taken from Surah Al-A'raf, it mentions, نعم في الآية نوع الشرك المقصود فيها, the type of shirk that is intended within it, there are three types. Shirk akbar, the major shirk, for example, يعتقد أن الذي أتى بهذا الولد هو الولي الفلاني ونحو لأنهما أضافا الخلق إلى غير الله. It mentions, for example, the major shirk is that a person believes that the one who came with this child, I was wali so and so, that gave them a child. The reason they had a child is because of wali so and so. This is shirk akbar, takes them out of the fold of Islam. For example, some groups of tasawwuf, the people of Sufiya, they will go to the wali, the one who they consider to be their saint and the likes, and they will ask him to make dua for a child and the likes, Jilani and the likes. And what happens? If they have a child, they'll say it's because of him. He brought the child. He brought the child to us. This is shirk akbar. The dangers of these people, Allahul Musta'an, and this it's not something that we are happy to say, but this is a sad reality that they have. You even find when someone gets married, newlyweds, the first night is spent with the wali, not the husband. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. But that's how much these people are deceived into having servitude to them. That they believe in order for their marriage to have barakah, the wife goes with the wali first, before the husband. Even in this situation, they won't know whose child it is. Is it the wali or the husband's child? Allahul Musta'an. And this is not just a rumor, this is facts, this is what they do. يعني الزوجة نعم لا شو اسمع أول ليلة الزواج كيف يقول للميت ما في علاقة بالميت الولي تمشي للولي قبل الزوج لا الكلام واضح يعني بس في أطفال يعني كلام واضح زواج يعني زواج أول ليلة زواج لا تبيت مع الزوج مع الولي واضح كلام لا الكلام واضح ما ذكرنا القبور لا أنا قلت لا يدري من أين الولد من الولي أو من الزوج أنا ذكرت كل هذا. So the second type of shirk is shirk asghar. For example, يضيف سلامة الولد ووقايته إلى الأطباء ونحوهم لأنه أضاف النعمة إلى السبب ونسي المسبب. Shirk asghar, for example, when a newborn is born, they attribute the safety and protection of the child to the doctors and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will say the doctor saved my child. And they will not attribute it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes you'll see a video going around saying, subhanallah, the child was going to die, the doctors didn't give up. Allah is the one who guided them to keep the child alive. It's nothing to do with the doctors, they're just a means. But if a person believes it's the doctors, then that is shirk asghar, that they refer the attribute to the means and not to the one who caused the means, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also from shirk asghar, في العبودية بأن يقدم محبته على محبة الله ويلهيه عن طاعته فكيف نجعل هذا الولد ندا لله في المحبة. That a person loves the child that they've been given, because this ayah is specifically referring to when they were blessed with a child. Yani when Salih came to them, the child Salih, now that was the ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But loving the child before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, i.e. that you're distracted from worship because of the child, then this is shirk asghar. This is shirk asghar. And what we can understand from this, love of anything that causes you to turn away from worship, then this is falling into shirk asghar. Now, a person will fall into shirk asghar. The next evidence that's mentioned, it says, قال ابن حزم رحمه الله اتفقوا على تحريم كل اسم معبد لغير الله كعبد عمر وعبد الكعبة وما أشبه ذلك حاشا عبد المطلب. So I mentioned it's agreed upon the prohibition of every name of servitude to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I saying Abdul Amr, for example, or Abdul Kaaba, slave of the Kaaba, and the likes, with the exception of Abdul Muttalib. Taib Su'al, why is Abdul Muttalib an exception?
Maybe because Muttalib is just صفر يطلب.
No, كونه عبد المطلب يعني كاملا لا تفرق بين عبد والمطلب. عبد المطلب لماذا استثني؟ طيب في ناحية نعم، ولكن عبد الكعبة منهيا وليس من أسماء الله.
عبد الحجر المطلب صفر يعني يمكن هو يتطلب.
المطلب اسم لعم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. نعم المطلب اسم نعم، ولكن لماذا استثنى? Why is it exempt? Why is there an exception of عبد المطلب؟ نعم لم يكن اسما، كان لقبا، كان اسمه شيبة الحمد. نعم كان اسمه شيبة. His name was Shayba, so it wasn't a name, it was what? A nickname. Because when he came to Medina with Al-Muttalib, because of the travel, his journey, his skin tone changed, his complexion changed from the hardships of traveling. I said, Man hadha al-abd? They say, who is this slave? He said, Abdul Muttalib. They named him slave of Muttalib. But he wasn't a slave. But they saw him as if he was a slave. So he was given the nickname Abdul Muttalib. But lam yakun abdan wa lam yakun isman. He was not a slave, nor was it a name. Rather it was a nickname. عم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الاسم هذا هو الاسم. لا ارجع السيرة وتتعرفي عليه.
أعرف أنه عم الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم مجدد ضيعته.
Okay, question. If I'm in fard prayer and I'm called by my mother crying or child, and there's still time before the next one comes in, shall I break my prayer and answer them? La. If you're in the salat that's fard, that's wajib, you're not allowed to break the salat because someone's calling you. If your mother is calling you crying, no. You hasten the salah. As for if the salah is voluntary, you break it. But if the salah is fard, you don't break it. You finish the salah. Also, there was a question in the sisters group regarding helping an elderly woman in the salah who's struggling to get up. La, you don't help her. The salah is nothing but you and Allah Azza wa Jal. If she's struggling in the salah, she needs to pray in a chair. If she's struggling to get up and she can't keep up, she prays in a chair. Where do we take this from? At the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, for his Salama, they made a rope for her to lean on, during the salah. And he said he removed her. He said, pray sitting down. If you can't pray standing, then you sit. So if you're in salah, you can't be in salah and then doing this, helping someone else get up. La. You are in salah. There's nothing but you and your salah. Naam, you don't help others in the salah. You see? Rather, if someone's calling you, then you hasten your salah, you speed up your salah. Naam. Of the things I asked some of the mashaykh, for example, if I'm in salah and the child is, like, for example, going towards the window, can I move and get the child but still be in the salah? They said yes. You don't leave the salah, you're still in salah, but you move to grab the child. You see? You move to grab the child. Because that movement is by durura, is a necessity. But as for just crying and the likes, then you hasten the salah. No. Wallahu a'lam. So when I mentioned before the prohibition of names of Abd and stuff, names that are not allowed is stuff like you have heard names of Abdul Rasul, Abdul Nabi. These names are not allowed. Abd for anything other than Allah Azza wa Jal is not allowed. And we say Allah and His names and attributes. So Abdul Rahman, Abdullah, Abdul Muhsin, no problem. Abdul Salam, now, from the names of Allah, but name yourself Abd for other than Allah Azza wa Jal, la yajuz. Al-Malik is from Allah's names. So any of Allah's names, you have to ask about individual ones, any of Allah's names. The next point is mentioned, the third evidence. It says, عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما في الآية قال لما تغشاها آدم حملت فأتاهما إبليس فقال إني صاحبكما الذي أخرجتكما من الجنة لتطيعني أو لأجعلن له قرني أيل فيخرج من بطنك فيشقه ولا أفعلن يخوفهما سمياه عبد الحارث فأبيا أن يطيعاه فخرج ميتا ثم حملت فأتاهما فقال مثل قوله فأبيا أن يطيعاه فخرج ميتا ثم حملت فأتاهما فذكر لهما فأدركهما حب الولد فسمياه عبد الحارث فذلك قوله تعالى جعل له شركاء فيما آتاهما رواه ابن أبي حاتم وله بسند صحيح عن قتادة قال شركاء في طاعته ولم يكن في عبادته وله بسند صحيح عن مجاهد في قوله لئن آتيتنا صالحا قال أشفق ألا يكون إنسانا وذكر معناه عن الحسن وسعيد وغيرهما. Now what's mentioned in this, it mentioned this hadith that when Adam learned of his wife's pregnancy, Iblis came to them. Iblis came to them and said, I am your companion who had you removed from paradise. I am your companion who had you removed from paradise. I mentioned, obey me or I'll make him have 2 horns, like a deer, which will rip your insides when it comes out. This is what he said to Adam and Hawa. I said, I will, in order to cause them to fear him, into calling the child Abdul Harith. I to name the child Abdul Harith. But they refused to obey him. They refused to obey him. Then the child was born stillborn. Then she became pregnant again. The same situation happened again. They still disobeyed him. Ay shaitan, Iblis. The child was born, stillborn again. Then, when they were pregnant again, the sense of love for their child had overtaken them. So they called him Abdul Harith. And that's why Allah mentioned that they made shirk in that which they received. This hadith is recorded by Abu Hatim and it's mentioned to be authentic. Also narrated by Qatada. And he mentioned that they fell into shirk in obeying him, not in worshipping him. And shirk in obeying Iblis, not in worship of Iblis. And I mentioned that when good came to them, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when good came to them, He said, give us of good. He said they were afraid that it would not be a human. They were afraid that the child that she was bearing would not be a human. And this was the meaning mentioned by Al-Hasan, Al-Basri and Al-Sa'id and others. So, of the things that's mentioned, عبد الحارث اختار هذا الاسم لأنه اسمه لأن اسم هذا اسمه فأراد أن يعبداه لنفسه. He mentioned that this was the name of Iblis. However, what's mentioned, هذه القصة باطلة من وجوه. This story is false from a number of angles. The first, ليس في ذلك خبر صحيح عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقال ابن حزم إنها مكذوبة موضوعة. It mentioned there is no authentic narration from the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم with this story. But rather it is a lie and a fabrication. Also, Allah wouldn't mention their sin except mentioning their tawbah. Because this is a prophet Adam. As when Adam disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, he mentioned his tawbah. He mentioned his tawbah. Also, الأنبياء معصومون من الشرك باتفاق العلماء. The prophets and messengers are protected from shirk by consensus of the scholars. Also in the hadith that mentions the situation of Yawm al-Qiyamah, when mankind comes to Adam seeking him to intercede with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's going to excuse himself based on his sin, that he ate from the tree. And had it been that he fell into shirk, he would have excused himself based on that, as is more befitting and stronger reason to excuse himself than eating from the tree. So qiyasan is not possible. That's of the reasons why that states that story cannot be true. Also, when Shaitan said, Inni sahibukuma, I'm your companion, no one says this when they want to deceive you. When they're going to misguide you, they're not going to say this. Also, لا يمكن أن يصدق أن الشيطان يجعل له قرني أيل فهذا شرك في الربوبية. It's not possible for him to believe Iblis would make the baby have two horns, because then this will be shirk in lordship, because Allah huwa al-Khaliq. Allah is the only creator. Naam. So if they believed Iblis, then they'll believe that he يعني شريك لله في الخلق. They will believe that he was a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in creation. And that's the importance of understanding Tawhid. Because someone else may hear this story and they say, MashaAllah, and run with it, without understanding the factors that allow us to understand that this is not the case. That this is rather a lie. So what's mentioned, the shirk that is being referred to in the actual tafsir of this ayah is not regarding Adam and Hawa, but rather all of Bani Adam. The shirk that they fall into in reality, when they attribute the ni'mah to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of a child, or they attribute the good health of a child to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those matters that we previously mentioned. Also, of the things to be understood, Allah blessing you with a daughter or a son is equal in ni'mah. Because you have some who believe that being blessed with being given a daughter is actually a punishment and not a blessing. لكن هذا مردود. هذا من اعتقادات الجاهلية. This is from the beliefs of Jahiliyyah. So we'll stop there today, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll continue from the next chapter, which is Bab Qawlullahi ta'ala, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يُلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَائِهِ. And that's going to talk about Al-Ilhad. Al-Ilhad, which we'll define next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, also. Now, so a new topic, inshallah, that will come next week, inshallah ta'ala.
سؤالك شأن يكون غبي طاعة الزوجة لزوجها في معصية الله شرك أكبر ولا أصغر؟
أصغر.
أصغر ها؟
وقد يكون شرك أكبر. Is the name Malik allowed without the word Abdul? Naam, as long as you say Malik and not Al-Malik. But it's better to say Abdul Malik. That's more honorable as well for a person. No. Any other questions? How would you advise someone who has doubts about Islam suddenly after practicing for a couple of years? Doubts only comes with ignorance. Doubts comes with ignorance, so they need to seek knowledge. They need to seek knowledge. And address the issues they have doubt with knowledge. And if they continue to have doubt, then this is a major issue, because doubt can be kufr. If a person doubts that which is clear, if they doubt that Islam is true, then this is kufr. If a person doubts that the Quran is kalam of Allah, this is kufr. If a person doubts that the Prophet Muhammad is the final messenger, then this is kufr. So one is to be cautious. Now, في يعني هذا كفر. نعم. So you have to be very cautious. What does a person have doubts in? No. You speak to that person, find out what do they have doubts in. You have to speak to that person, find out what's their doubts, and then take it from there. So with that we'll come to the end, inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala nabiyina wa habib Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakum khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.